Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. We do this show each and every single Monday. So if you like that, hopefully you check out the channel. So let's get into the news you need to know about. This first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Giants, again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors. Giants hire former Dolphins defensive coordinator Patrick Graham, and the Dolphins promote Josh Boyer to defensive coordinator. The Giants officially have a new defensive coordinator. New York is hiring Dolphins defensive coordinator Patrick Graham, a source told Tom Pelissero of NFL Network. In a corresponding move, Miami is promoting Josh Boyer to replace Graham, Pelissero tweets. Graham was already the defensive play caller in Miami, but the team allowed him to interview anyway. It's a lateral move, but head coach Brian Flores allowed him to walk out the door. Graham coached with new Giants coach Joe Judge in New England, so there's a lot of familiarity there. Graham got his start as a graduate assistant at Wagner College back in 2002 and spent most of the next decade in the college ranks before making the jump to become an assistant with the Patriots in 2009. Okay, so let's get into Josh Boyer here a little bit before we get into my thoughts. Boyer is a former Patriots assistant who rose through the ranks under Bill Belichick. He served as a cornerbacks coach for New England for 7 straight years before Flores hired him to be his passing game coordinator and cornerbacks coach last season. So let's start with Patrick Graham before I give you my opinion on this move. Let's start with the Patrick Graham situation first, then we'll get into Josh Boyer. It is very odd that our coordinators, from a season that really wasn't expected out of this team, obviously, the tanking, all that other stuff. But we overachieved. We won 5 games. Really should have won 7 games if you go back and look at some of the games that, the Dolphins probably should have won. You think, or maybe even 3 games that they kind of just lost. You think about the Bills game, the Jets game, and you could make an argument for the Steelers game. That could have been handled a little bit better. So the Dolphins overachieved. A lot. And obviously Brian Flores, the staff he assembled, I said it when it first happened. I like Patrick Graham. I like Chad O'Shea, especially Chad O'Shea, who with his development background, how well he's done with receivers in the past and developing them, and him getting his chance as a coordinator, running the Josh McDaniels offense, all that stuff. So Brian did a great job of assembling a coaching staff, especially for a rookie head coach. He did a really, really good job of finding young talent that hasn't been a coordinator yet, but are up and coming, talent. And he did a great job of that. And they both, in my opinion, Patrick Graham and Chad O'Shea did a really good job. Their rookie seasons. It's just really weird for whatever reason. Now Chad O'Shea was fired, so that's different. But Patrick Graham moves on to the Giants. I don't know. It's just an odd organizational move, and whatever their thought process was behind this is just interesting. Now, I will say this is different than the Chad O'Shea firing. Number one, and now let's get into a little bit of Josh Boyer. Number one, we'll stick with Patrick Graham and get Josh Boyer. Number one, Patrick Graham was running Brian Flores' defense. If you watched the New England Patriots when Brian Flores was the defensive coordinator there and calling plays, it was the same defense. It's the same defense as New England runs. It's the same defense. So the defense isn't going to change. We don't have to worry about that. You're not going to have to teach a new system, get familiar with all of that stuff. Josh Boyer is going to run the same defense. It's Brian Flores, all of that. It's still going to be the same defense. It's not going to be like Chan Gailey coming in here and teaching the team a spread system. This is going to be the same defense. So that's a good thing. So I think the letting him walk thing, for whatever reason why Patrick walked, it's not that big of a blow to the defense. It's not that big of a blow to the organization. So the whole Patrick Graham firing, that's my thoughts on it. It's not that big of a deal at all. The defense is still going to be the same. And to be honest with you, I think we kind of upgraded there. And now let's get into Josh Boyer. Josh Boyer was, again, let me read this just to be 100% sure. Josh Boyer was the cornerback coach for New England for 7 straight years. And he was our passing game coordinator and our cornerbacks coach last season. So why is that significant? Well, you look at the cornerback room and the lack of talent that it had and the development that some of those guys made over the course of the season is crazy. It's crazy good. You think about Eric Rowe from where he started, him switching to safety, all of the decisions and his, the development of the secondary in general was outstanding. You think about Nick Needham, obviously an undrafted free agent, did not have a good preseason. Goes into the regular season, all he does is get better. So Josh Boyer not only had a great stint here last season on developing talent here, because he did a really good job of that, but he had a great 7 years in New England doing the same thing. Like, they obviously have a lot of talent on the Patriots do from this year's team, from him developing them. You think about Devin McCourty, not Stephon Gilmore, because that was a free agent signing. You think about J.C. Jackson. And so a lot of really good secondary members for the Patriots he helped develop. So he has a great development background. He did a great job with our corners this year with a very little talent, next to no talent, really no talent at all. So I like him. He reminds me a lot of Chad O'Shea in terms of his background, why he's going to be our defensive coordinator. I actually think this is an upgrade from Patrick Graham. Patrick had a pretty good history with linebackers. He had Dante Hightower under his belt. He had Blake Martinez from the Packers, who is a good player. He's a very good middle linebacker, very versatile. He helped develop him a little bit. So, they one thing they have in common is they have a good developmental background as well. But I think Josh's is better. And I think Josh is just an overall better upgrade. I like the main reason why is I just love what he did with the talent in the cornerback room. And his history with cornerbacks is really good as well. So I like this. I like this move. I think, again, it's going to be the same scheme. And the only difference is he going to be a better situational play caller than Patrick Graham was. And you could argue that Patrick Graham wasn't the greatest. I think he got better as the season went along, especially when things started to settle down at the roster. The defense got a lot better. But you could argue that Patrick Graham wasn't the greatest situational play caller. I mean, the Steelers game is a perfect example of that. You got a 3rd and 20. And really, especially early on in the year, Patrick gave up a lot of 3rd and longs. Like a lot of, not just 3rd and long, I'm talking 3rd and 20s. That's 2 first downs in one play. So, that's not the greatest thing. But I do think the defense got better as the season went along. So overall, I don't think this firing hurts us. I like Josh Boyer a lot as a developer of talent, and I'm excited to see what he does as a play caller and how he runs this defense. It reminds me a little bit of Darren Rizzi with some of the hires that the Dolphins have made, where Darren did a great job of finding special team talent all the time, even during in the season. He found great kickers for short stints and then got rid of them and replaced them with good kickers. I mean, he was the master at making sure that we always had good talent on that side of the unit. They were always well prepared. And that's something that these coordinators have had experience in, is being very good developers of talent, and then they get their chance to coordinate a side of the ball. And I think that's a good blueprint to follow to find good coordinators. Are they good developers of talent? Did they do well with their units when they were coaching them, whether it's defensive backs, running backs, whatever it is? I think that's a really good blueprint to follow, and we continue to follow that with Josh Boyer. So I'm excited to see what he does. I think he's an upgrade just because of his accolades before becoming a coordinator are better than what Patrick's were before he became a coordinator. So I'm excited to see what Josh does. It is weird, though, if you think about it, your offensive defensive coordinator from an overachieving Dolphins team they're gone. And I don't know, I just find it odd. It's very weird. Like, if you think about it, the Chiefs, no coordinators leave there. Josh McDaniels is still going to be the Patriots offensive coordinator. They don't lose anybody. And those teams, obviously very successful. But our team, I went 5-11, are losing coaching staff members left and right. You think about our offensive line coach, who's one of the best in the league. He's gone. Jim Caldwell's leaving. Patrick Graham is gone. And obviously Chad O'Shea was fired. It's a very, very odd situation, to say the least. Let's get into some draft rumors. I think this is the first of the year, to be honest with you. And this is obviously involving the Dolphins. This is some potential in terms of, again, these are just draft rumors. Teams like the Dolphins, Chargers, and Panthers could move up to land a quarterback. So these are just rumors that, this comes from Pro Football Rumors. So those are some of the teams that are rumored to move up. We know the Chargers are. The rumor is that they're done with Phillip Rivers. They don't have a replacement for him. This quarterback draft is pretty good. You got a lot of good developmental talent with Jordan Love. Justin Herbert had a really good bowl game against Wisconsin. So his stock is up. I love Tua a lot. I think he's the best quarterback in the draft. Joe Burrow is obviously... I think he's more of a mystery than people give him credit for. I'm not saying... I think he's going to be a great quarterback. But I feel like he's a little bit overrated in some aspects. That's really all I have to say about that. I still think he's going to be a really good quarterback, but I don't think he's a done deal as most people think he is. So there's a lot of good... This quarterback draft is very top heavy. So if you want to get a franchise quarterback, you're going to have to trade up. And the Panthers are an interesting one. They pick 7, so they're in trading range. And the rumor is that the Giants are the ones who are willing to move down in that top 5 area. So I don't think if the Dolphins want someone, they're obviously going to get the pick of the litter because they're closest. And they might get into a bidding war. We'll see. But it's just interesting that the Panthers and Chargers are some of the teams that are rumored to trade up. Even us, the Dolphins. So we'll see what we do with. We have the most ammunition to work with. So the Dolphins have the pick of the litter if they want it. And again, just to update you guys, the Chargers pick 6, one spot behind the Dolphins, and the Panthers are right behind them, and they pick 7. So, in case you're wondering on that one. I think that's all the news that we have to talk about today. I think we talked about Vince Biegel last week's episode. We don't need to get into that again. So before we get into the fan Q&A, we're going to continue our free agent talk. And every single week before we answer the fan questions, we go through a specific positional group and we preview them as free agents, what the Dolphins might do, what should they do, what are the Dolphins' options, all that kind of stuff. So I've put together a list of receivers that could be on the Dolphins' radar. Some of these guys I'm going to argue for or argue against. So let's start with what I think the Dolphins should do at receiver. They shouldn't do anything. Just like the quarterbacks last week, we're going to start with the least interesting positional groups. And receiver is one of those. Receiver, in my opinion, is a very talented group on this team. Preston Williams, an undrafted free agent out of, I think, what was it, Colorado State? I can't remember. From Colorado. I wanted to get his college right. But obviously, undrafted free agent. Tore his ACL in a shortened season. But he is going to be a very good receiver. Devontae Parker had a career season. We've already got him under contract. So, Albert Wilson's good depth there. Isaiah Ford, who's a free agent, who I hope the Dolphins re-sign because he played very well at the tail end of last season. We're going to get into him more here in a second. But really what the Dolphins should do is nothing. Now, they could make decisions on whether to keep or let go of certain players, like Isaiah Ford or Albert Wilson, or even Jakeem Grant. And out of those 3, the one that I want to keep the most is Isaiah Ford. And so let's get into that right now. So if the Dolphins were going to retain anybody, I think it should be Isaiah Ford. Isaiah Ford played the final... Let's see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He played the final 5 games of the season. Okay, against the Jets, he had his first game starting. He had 92 yards. Okay, in the final 5 games of the year, him being put into the starting lineup, he had 244 yards. He averaged 10 yards a catch. He had 1 touchdown, and he was a dominant player in the slot. He developed very well, great chemistry with Ryan Fitzpatrick, and really the first pure slot player we've had on this team in a very long time, and he succeeded in that. And he's only 23 years old. He's 6'2", for a slot receiver. He's a big slot receiver. He's a great route runner, and again, he's like we haven't had a pure slot receiver like this, like I said, in a long, long time. Again, he's only 23 years old. He showed great promise in the final 5 games of this season. And, those 93 yards against the Jets, Devontae Parker went out. He was really the only playmaker on that team left. And we didn't even know it at the time. He just had a really good breakout game. And ever since that game, he played very well. The coaches rave about how smart he is. He helped teach the receivers and bring them along in the offense. I think he's a smart, really good route runner. He's big for a slot receiver. Like I said, he's 6'2". He's got good run after the catch ability. He's a physical receiver. And again, this is another young player that Chad O'Shea helped develop before, obviously, his exit out of Miami, that had a lot of talent coming into this roster, and he just never really could put it together and never really get regular season snaps. He finally did. He showed that he can be a pretty dang good slot receiver in the NFL. With Preston Williams and Devontae Parker on the outside, you have Isaiah Ford work the middle of the field. I think that's a very dangerous combination. And he's a good athlete too. He's not a slow slot receiver by any stretch of the imagination. So I like Isaiah Ford. I think the Dolphins should retain Isaiah Ford, and whatever that takes, they should. The funny thing about this is, Allen Hurns was just signed, and he was signed to do the things that Isaiah Ford does. And Isaiah Ford, in my opinion, is just better at them. I think he's a better route runner. I think he's a better athlete. He had more consistent hands than Allen Hurns did. Allen Hurns had some drops later in the season and really just took his job in the last 5 games of the year. Really just kind of took his job and did a really good job with it. Really quickly, we'll go through Albert Wilson. Albert Wilson... now, he's not a free agent. He's still under contract, but he is kind of up in the air whether the Dolphins should let him go or not. I think Albert Wilson should be kept. I think he got healthy at the tail end of last year. He's a very versatile player. He can play on the outside, inside. He's a deep threat receiver. This is a 4-4, 4-3 guy. So he's a great athlete. He's a great run after the catch receiver. He can do a lot of things in your offense. I think he's worth keeping. I think he's a better version of Jakeem Grant. He's not as explosive as Jakeem Grant. He's a better receiver than Jakeem Grant. He's a more physical player than Jakeem Grant. But he's not as explosive, I would say. But if you had to pick between some of the team, the players that are kind of up there between Jakeem Grant and Albert Wilson, I think a lot of Dolphins fans would pick Jakeem Grant because of his explosive ability. But I think Albert Wilson, if he's healthy, is just a better receiver than Jakeem Grant. And he's a very explosive receiver as well, and he still brings you great speed, and again, great ability in the open field to work the middle of the field, catch a ball over the middle of the field, to turn a 6-yard gain into a 75-yard touchdown. So I like Albert Wilson. He started to get healthier till towards the end of the season. I think he's worth keeping under contract for the 2020 season. So that's really what all I think the Dolphins do. They should make. If you can keep Jakeem Grant, obviously, you should. I don't really think the Dolphins should get rid of any of these players. I think they should just leave the receiver core intact. But if you had to pick between some of the receivers that are kind of up in the air, I would like to keep Albert Wilson, and I definitely would like to keep Isaiah Ford, who Isaiah Ford is a free agent. His rookie contract is over with. So I definitely want to keep Isaiah Ford. I think the Dolphins should work as hard as they can to keep everybody intact with this receiver core, because I think it's a very talented and versatile, especially with the addition of Preston Williams. You have you 2 outside guys, Devontae Parker and Preston Williams, both like 6'3" physical dudes who are great, really good outside receivers. You got Isaiah Ford, Albert Wilson to work the middle of the field, and they're both really good at that in different ways. And you have Jakeem Grant, who could be your kind of a gadget type of a player. You put at maybe a deep threat every now and then. I think that's a good mix, a lot of versatility in that room, and I think the Dolphins should work to retain that as much as possible. So let's get into some of the outside guys. Outside of the building. For other teams, now I made a list, we'll start with AJ Green. Okay, so the Dolphins should not get AJ Green. They have major issues on both lines of scrimmage that they need to invest in as much as possible. I'm talking about the offensive and defensive lines, obviously. So to invest in a receiver that you don't need when you have younger up-and-coming talent that you already have under contract, and this would just be a backwards move for obvious reasons. They have similar players in positions, like I said, that are already under contract. They're younger and they're ascending talent, and there would be no reason to sign AJ Green for obvious reasons. He's going to command a lot of money, and that's obviously the Dolphins don't need to invest in the receivers room. We just talked about Isaiah Ford, who's going to be a free agent. I think he should be re-signed. Matthew Slater is another player that I want to bring up. That's a free agent from the New England Patriots. He's 34 years old. He's an 8-time Pro Bowler, 2-time first-team All-Pro. Obviously, not for being a receiver, but a special teams player. I think the Dolphins should look into Matthew Slater. He brings great leadership. Obviously, everybody always talks about you need a veteran leadership, all that kind of stuff in your building. So he brings that. He knows how to win, all that stuff. He brings that New England pedigree. He knows Brian Flores really well. So I think that could be a good thing to point things in the right direction. Plus, you're getting an 8-time Pro Bowl special teams player. So that could be something the Dolphins look into. Very similar to the Brandon Bolden move when Brandon Bolden left New England and we signed him for very similar reasons. He's a really good special teams player, and he was a really good change of pace running back as well. We really wanted Brandon to do some of the same things that I just said Matthew could do, is bring a winning mentality, get these young guys in the right direction. And he kind of, he helped a little bit with some of those games. Obviously, he made an impact with his playing ability, but the whole locker room situation was a mess. Doesn't matter. I like Matthew Slater a lot. He could be a great contributor on special teams. It could be a good leader in a very young team and getting them in the right direction, especially some of those tough AFC East divisional games could really help us make some special teams plays, flip field position, and really get these young guys going in the right direction. So I like Matthew Slater a lot. Won't cost any type of cash at all, and if he's willing at the age of 34 to come to a Dolphins team that's who's going there in the right direction, I think would be a very solid move by the Miami Dolphins. And again, these are just players that I think the Dolphins would either look at. Should they? This is just my list, and I think to me these are the guys that kind of stick out to me. The next on this list is Robbie Anderson. I've heard a lot of talk about Robbie Anderson to the Dolphins this is no rumors or even there's no substance to this at all. But for some reason, I've seen a lot of articles on ESPN and Bleacher Report about Robbie Anderson going to the Dolphins. And again, this is all of that is speculation for good reason. The Dolphins should not get Robbie Anderson for very similar reasons to AJ Green. Now, Robbie Anderson, a different receiver than AJ Green. Robbie Anderson's a deep threat. He can do a lot of different things, but he's mostly a deep threat. It reminds me a lot of Will Fuller. He's an outside receiver. We have Devontae Parker. You have Preston Williams already in those positions. So you would really have to move him in the slot inside if you want to play all of those guys at the same time, or use him as a rotational player. That's not what kind of contract he is going to be getting. Not as a rotational player, not as a situational player. He's going to be a starter on someone's team that needs receiver help. And for that reason, the Dolphins should not invest a contract in him, because it would just be backwards. There would be no reason to have him. You have players on this roster already that can do very similar things to him, like an Albert Wilson or Jakeem Grant, who are deep threats as well. Plus, they can give you more in terms of versatility, whether it's gadget plays. Like I said, Albert Wilson can work the middle of the field as well. So Robbie Anderson would not be a good fit because of the roster that the Dolphins have already assembled. And it would just be backwards to invest money into a player like that. And another under the radar player the final player on my list is Kendrick Bourne. Now, Kendrick Bourne, former LSU player, actually not true. He went to Eastern Washington. I have this on my list here. I don't know why I thought he went to LSU. He's 24 years old. He's 6'1". He's another rotational player. And I don't think this player is going to command a lot of money, but he's a good red zone threat. Every time I watch Kendrick Bourne in a 49ers game, he scores a touchdown almost every single time. He's a big target. He's a really good, like I said, he plays his best football in the red zone. I don't know why he's had a lot of issues with consistency in terms of catching the football, but he's a really good route runner. And I like his red zone ability. He could be someone that the Dolphins use in rotation. He's a very under-the-radar guy. This guy's not going to cost any money at all. This would be equivalent of like an undrafted free agent. In terms of his stats this past season, he had 30 catches, which isn't terrible. for like your third, fourth string receiver. He had almost 400 yards. He had 358 yards. He averaged 11 yards a catch. He had five touchdowns. And again, he's not used a lot, but when he is used in the red zone, I feel like he produces at a pretty dang good clip. He has some issues with drops, though. That's some of the downside to him. But I like Kendrick Bourne as a up-and-coming player. He's only 24 years old. Again, 6'1". And to me, he has proven himself to be a pretty good rotational player who's a good red zone threat. So that's my entire list. I hope, I don't know if I'm on base with some of you guys in terms of that kind of stuff, but the Dolphins, again, should not invest in receiver. There's no reason to get a big money free agent like a Robbie Anderson or AJ Green, who are going to go to teams and start. And not one. AJ Green's a great player, but we already have players, again, similar to him on the roster that are, to be honest with you, on his level. Like Devontae Parker, he's one of the best receivers in the AFC. He proved that last season. And Preston Williams is going to be a really good player. So for obvious reasons, you don't want to invest money in that on AJ Green. And same thing with Robbie Anderson. Robbie Anderson is going to get starting receiver. He's going to be a starting receiver on someone else's team. I don't know if he'll get that kind of money, but that's what he's going to be, is a starter on someone's team. He would not be a starter on this team. He would be more of a rotational player because you don't want to take Preston Williams and Devontae Parker off the field. You want to keep those two on the field as much as possible. So anytime he would get off the field, it would be in substitution for one of those two. He's not a great slot receiver because he's not a very physical receiver. He's more of an outside deep threat. So those are some of the bigger names in the receiver free agent market. And those are the reasons the Dolphins should just, obviously, for obvious reasons, not go after them. Again, you want to invest in the lines of scrimmage, and plus it would just be, very counterintuitive to sign one of those two. Just because of, if the Dolphins did do it, it would just because of their names. And we're past that. We know this is no longer a team ran by Mike Tannenbaum. Thank God. This is an intelligent organization that makes intelligent moves, at least so far. And this is going to be pretty much their first big free agency. They just got out from under all of those back contracts. They have all this free cap space. So we'll see what they do in free agency. But I honest to God, if they signed either one of those two, I'd be very upset. Now again, there are some under the radar talent like Kendrick Bourne, who's young, who's done very well in the red zone when he's gotten his opportunities. And you got Matthew Slater, who's just a great special teams player, a vet, an 8-time Pro Bowler because of his special teams prowess, and could be a very good Frank Gore-esque signing for the Dolphins. Like what the Bills did with Frank Gore, we could do that with Matthew Slater, and I think that would be good for the organization. So other than that, that's your free agency preview for the Miami Dolphins. All right, let's get into the fan Q&A, ladies and gentlemen, where we answer fans' questions. And I forgot to upload the fan Q&A. I'm so sorry, everybody. It's too late. So I guess this is this week's episode. There's no fan Q&A this week, unfortunately. I apologize. I hope you guys... I apologize for that, guys. That's my bad. This episode's getting out later anyway. That's also my fault. I cannot believe I forgot to put up the fan Q&A. I apologize to everybody. Maybe we'll do a special... I don't know. Maybe we'll... I don't know. Well, I guess we'll just have to wait till next week's episode. I apologize. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Regardless of that, probably didn't, because the fan Q&A is my personal favorite part of these shows, and I think I like that a lot. I like that aspect of the show a lot. So it sucks. I forgot to do it. I'm an idiot. I apologize. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. Let me know what you guys think about the receivers list. Obviously, we're going to continue to do... I'm going to upload separate videos on the free agency class as well. So hopefully you guys support that. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. Sorry about the whole fan Q&A thing. But again, the Dolphins have a lot of decisions to make when it comes to free agency, and I hope we just get a lot of offensive and defensive linemen. That's all I hope for. If I had a Christmas Dolphins wish list, that's all I would want. I want to, and I can't wait to get into those positional groups, because there's a lot of really good under the radar players that the Dolphins could get on both sides of the line of scrimmage. So I'm excited to do those. It'll be a little bit from now because we still have to get through some of the other positional groups that aren't as important. I think the last one is tight ends, and then we're going to get into some positional groups that the Dolphins can actually make moves in. But I think next week's episode we'll do tight ends just to get that out of the way. So that is going to be it, guys. I am Skyx83. I apologize for the fake Q&A. I forgot to do that, and I'll see you guys in the next one.